Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
To quote an old friend of ours, Tony Randall, sometimes they stand. Susan and I feel a bit like Bob Hope and Bing Crosby as we're off on the road to Minneapolis. We've never taped the show outside of New York, and it's giving us great, great pleasure to come here tonight to see this beautiful theater and to do this panel about theater in the regional resident nonprofit theaters around the country. So we're going to bring out the artistic directors. So I'd like to introduce our panel, beginning with, on my right, Barbara Gaines, who's the founder of the Chicago Shakespeare Theater, which this year won the Regional Theater Tony Award. Congratulations, Barbara. Barbara, I should say, has directed more than 30 Shakespeare plays. And I must ask you, which is the most difficult Shakespeare play to direct?
The one I'm doing now.
And that is?
Well, it will be the Scottish play.
Ooh. And to my near left, Martha Lavey has been the artistic director of the Steppenwolf Theater Company since 1996. She is also an ensemble member of the company. She's been acting there for many years in plays. And I have to ask you, Martha, as the artistic director of the Steppenwolf, does that mean you get to give yourself the best roles in the plays that the theater does?
Or take the roles that nobody else wants.
Very good answer. And congratulations to your theater for winning the Tony Award for August Osage County this year.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And on Martha's left, Peter Brocious has been the artistic director of the Children's Theater Company of Minneapolis. Since 1997, he has directed world premieres of Hansel and Gretel, The Snow Queen, and The Lost Boys of Sudan. And his theater won the Tony Award in 2003. Yes. And the cast on your foot, is that a hazard of being an artistic director?
Well, you know, they say break a leg. I took it literally, you know. No, the job of the artistic director is to take risks. I don't know if that includes surfing, so.
We wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
And to my right, our host here in Minneapolis, Joe Dowling, has been the artistic director of the Guthrie Theater since 1995. He was also the youngest artistic director of the Abbey Theater in Ireland, I think beginning in 1978, yes?
78, yes.
And those of you who live in the city may have noticed that he has built a $120 million theater here, one of the most beautiful theaters I've ever seen.
$125 million. That last 5 was hardest to get.
On that front, I cover Broadway, mainly for the New York Post, and I keep hearing from producers and investors and theater owners that the economic climate has changed radically in New York. We went through a boom time in the city where shows made a lot of money. I hear now that advance ticket sales have completely fallen off. Money is becoming very difficult to raise for Broadway shows. There are a lot of people worried in the commercial theater about what the economic times are going to bring. And I'm curious, Joe, what do you see the challenges and the troubles that are going to hit the nonprofit theaters if this economy continues to get worse?
The challenges are always going to be divided into different categories. I mean, the artistic challenges are to stay as vibrant as one can in difficult economic times. I think the issue, though, is fundraising is one of the most difficult things. You really have got to go out and do it on an annual basis. You've got to continue to do it. And when people's net worth reduces, then their giving reduces. And so I think all of us in the not-for-profit theater have to ensure that we get the correct balance between what we're raising in the private sector and how we're earning it at the box office. I think as we deal with difficult economic times, that balance may be skewed more in the direction of box office.
Now, Martha, you're going to be sort of protected from this environment because of that cash cow, August Osage County, raking in the money on Broadway and touring the country, right? So you're going to be just fine?
August Osage County and its commercial manifestation does generate some income, but it's certainly nothing that is, you know, sustaining in any central way. I mean, I think, you know, Joe has it just right. It's a question of really sort of calibrating the earned income and the contributed income and being mindful of that. I guess the other thing to say about it is that then it offers an opportunity also to be innovative in how one reaches audiences, speaks to them. I think the thing that I can't imagine any of the artistic directors here feeling that it was producing a different demand artistically.
Are you beginning to notice it at your theater? The economic downturn?
Luckily, because we're in the not-for-profit world, is that we have, I think probably all of us have a very, very loyal subscription base. And as long as we are doing excellent work, I hope we continue to keep that base. But I think, to go back to something you said, Martha, these are the times that try men's souls. And we have a great ability here to bring in new people by taking bigger risks. I think this is the time for bigger risks. This is the time to do something you've never done. This is the time to just reach out creatively and be audacious, quite frankly.
What Barbara says is so true. Communities like Minneapolis, and I'm sure Chicago, see a profound value in the role of cultural institutions like the Guthrie and the Children's Theater and Steppenwolf and Chicago Shakes. I mean, we add value in a way that I think people understand, and so they're willing to support it and invest in it.
So that's safe to say then that we're not going to sort of take the Disney production of Little Mermaid, should it be passing through Minneapolis in your theater, to pay the rent in these troubled economic times?
No, thank you. Those wheelies are safe on Broadway.
No, but there is a Broadway series here downtown, and I hope the Little Mermaid does come, and I hope that the opportunity for people to see work on the road and has the chance to witness the variety of theater. We have a range of things here, and we welcome visiting companies.
But there are things that tour the country now, as the founder, Tyrone Guthrie, said in his book, which people really shouldn't be being exposed to. And I don't know if this will make air. The Little Mermaid may be one of them, that this isn't quite worthwhile.
Bring back the censors, right, Susan?
No, I mean, the crime of the commercial theater in New York is its theme. Some of it, I mean, you have your wonderful play. Some of it is
You alone.
theme park material. You know, tourists are going there, and there are really things that you look at and I say, I wouldn't take my intelligent child to this.
But that's a choice you have. You
Yes.
can take them to that, or you can take them to other things. And what I'm saying is, I think we sometimes make distinctions between commercial theater and not-for-profit theater that are essentially bogus. The idea of creating work, whether it's for the commercial theater or the not-for-profit theater, that allows audiences to come and view live performance, I say bring it on. Let's have more live performance.
But even work that's created primarily to make money and to sell subsidiary toys and lunch boxes.
Well, you mentioned The Lion King earlier
Yeah.
on. You talked about The Lion King actually started here in Minneapolis. Its first outing was here in Minneapolis. I'm sure that has earned the people involved vast sums of money, but it's also great theater.
Great theater, yeah.
So I think the two can go together.
And they call me the butcher of Broadway. On this subject of mixing the nonprofit with the commercial, now, I don't get a sense that any of your theaters have done this, but there are nonprofit theaters out there that I have noticed seem to be very happy to lend themselves to commercial producers as tryout houses for Broadway-bound shows to get enhancement money from these commercial producers. Barbara, is that something that nonprofit theaters should be getting involved in?
I don't think you have to go that way. I mean, I think all of us would love a big fat Broadway musicals to start at our theater so it could be a great source of income for the theater. But I think the really great thing about not-for-profits, which you don't really get a lot of in for-profit, is that, I'll just give you an example. The last play of the last season, we did Troilus and Cressida, not one of Shakespeare's top 10.
Big commercial hit. A
Big,
lot of Broadway
huge,
producers headed to Chicago to see that
right,
one.
the producers were waiting in line to Troy. One of them called it Toyota and Cressida. But, wait.
So my friend Barry Weissler was out to Chicago.
That's right. But what I'm saying is we get to take bigger risks because of our dear subscribers.
Peter, at your theater, I've noticed Broadway, as Susan points out, increasingly represents a theme park. A lot of shows for children. In fact, I went to the Mall of America here in Minneapolis, and the Mall of America resembled a set for many Broadway shows that I see now.
It's been the source material.
Yeah. You do children's theater. Has there ever been the pressure, the temptation to do something that, in the Broadway climate of today, that is aggressively going after family audiences, you could do and send to New York and make a pile of money for the theater?
Well, we originated a show called A Year with Frog and Toad, which had...
I don't believe that made a pile of money on Broadway, though.
So much money I can't even talk about it on the air. But we received enhancement money to do that, and so yes, that was a nice thing to have that money. Yes, it was nice to take it to New York. And some pieces we do that, but our focus is on serving this audience. And if people want to come in and see that it can have another life, that's all sweet.
Well, your experience, Martha, with August Osage County. Now, Tracy Letts does not set out to write that play thinking, I'm going to go to Broadway and make a lot of money and win a Tony Award. But when do you begin to realize, in the run of a play like that, that that play is going to have a life beyond your theater, and indeed could make the transition from a non-profit theater to a for-profit theater?
When does that happen?
When do you begin to realize that there's a market for this beyond your non-profit arena?
3 different New York producers come and say, may we move your show? I mean...
With blank checkbooks and ready to go?
Well, again, just as Peter's saying, we always do our work for our theater and our audiences, and come what may. And I think that, you know, in general, and it does not happen very frequently, but if the energy around that show is such that it wants to have another life, it becomes evident. But I think trying to engineer that is a fool's game. For one thing, who would say, oh yes, this 13-character play with no known actors, brand new play, here's your ticket, baby, go. You know, it doesn't make any sense.
So many things on Broadway now are done with market groups involved, and that they're trying, that something that doesn't make any sense doesn't occur to them.
Right.
They take the element A and element B and put them all together and think, oh, this should be a hit now.
Yeah, it's not just marketing, is
Yes.
it? It's art. It's the brilliance of actors in August Osage County.
My sense of things in the commercial theater sometimes is that they do assemble really, really extraordinary artists, but then there becomes a kind of fear factor and they start backing away from the impulse. Do you know what I mean? So that there then becomes that kind of committee judgment mentality, and I think that to gain the real original energy of the artists requires that it not be mediated.
I think it really cheered the hearts of all of us who work outside of New York to recognize that here was something created in Chicago for a Chicago audience with a Chicago company, a Chicago writer, no intention of it being the Broadway hit, Tony Awards and all that, and it goes to New York, and New York wakes up and goes, oh my goodness, these actors can really act.
No, we went.
Oh my goodness.
Being a Broadway columnist, it wasn't until August Osage County that I realized there were theaters that were not in Times Square. So it was really very enlightening.
Better now. Thrilling for you.
It was very exciting.
But Martha, your theater has had the extraordinary destiny of these people came together, many of them when they were young unknowns, and some of them have become extremely famous and wealthy, but the successful ones come back to you.
Well, you know, first of all, that original company formed when they were very young people, and they share experiences with each other that are theirs and unique. And I think for some of our actors, particularly who have gone to great success, to be able to return to that group of original people and who know them in an unguarded way is a real refreshment. And further, they like to be on stage.
Yeah, I've always wanted to ask you, though, about Steppenwolf. Is it a hotbed of envy and jealousy? Because some of the actors became really famous and some didn't, and they think, when did I get my sitcom? And she did.
I don't know that to be the presiding
ethos of the Steppenwolf.
No, not at all. But, you know, I remember when I first met them, This was 1980, and I was just out of college. And I thought, ensemble, you know, oh gosh, everybody's, it's all about love. It was the fiercest group of people and competitive and so forth, but that's because they're good.
Yeah.
But also there's very authentically love among all of us too. So
I want to get your thoughts on one final topic here. I was in London a couple of weeks ago, and I spent a lot of time at the National Theatre of Great Britain, a wonderful theatre run by Nick Keitner. And I wonder why, in this country, we do not have the equivalent of a national theatre. Peter?
We do. It's called the resident theater movement, you know, and I think that's our national theater. I mean, I just think it's, and I think the success of that is that it springs out of communities in very different ways. It assumes, you know, a multiplicity of forms, and I think it serves us well.
Martha, any claims to Steppenwolf becoming the National Theatre of America?
Well, no, in the sense that Peter's describing, which is that the entire country represents the diversity that is the American voice, and I think that that's very important.
One of the things that we have tried to do here with our new theatre is to describe ourselves not as a regional theatre, which is a term that's often used pejoratively about theatres outside of New York, but also to describe ourselves as a national centre. Not the national centre by any means, but a national centre. And there are many, many theatres around the country that could so claim. We can't have, I don't believe, ever a single national theatre in the United States for the reasons that Martha mentions, the difference, the diversity, the geography, the history, the sort of cultural differences. But in European theatres, there is the opportunity to recognize that the state has a responsibility not only for the welfare of people in terms of the healthcare and education and so on, but also the cultural welfare of the community. And theatres throughout Europe can, in fact, have the kind of experimentation, the kind of development of artists, the development of new work that somehow or other here in the conversation that we're having tonight proves sometimes difficult and elusive for American theatres. And it is about a community, whether through individuals or through their state, actually supporting the arts.
And for the time being, Barbara?
We're a long way from that. We are a very long way from that kind of support from the government. The culture here is so different. In Europe, in England, there is a feeling of possession of the theater. I have to tell you about a wonderful story. When I went to Paris once, and we went and I went to see the Comédie Française, and there were all these police circling the building. I go inside, the theater is full, the leading actor comes out, and in French says, "Mesdames et messieurs, we are on strike. You cannot see our play tonight." Then, for the next hour, think about this, the next hour, the actors come out on stage and are arguing with the people in the audience about this is our theater. We have a right to see this play tonight. We will not go. And I thought, oh my God, if this happened in our theater, people would be saying, well, where do you want to go to eat? What restaurant do you want to go? And
Well, don't you worry about that. Sarkozy's come in and he's going to break those unions, and every actor's going to have to work 16 performances a week. All right. We are now going to turn it over to you, and I'm sure you will have more insightful questions than anything that Susan and I could have come up with.
Yes, my name is Diana Cantor. I moved here 3 years ago, grew up in London, have lived in France and in Belgium, so I'm very interested in the comparisons you're making. What has thrilled me in this community is the accessibility that theatre has in this market, whether that's to do with not-for-profit or living in a regional part of a big country rather than a capital city. But I just want to applaud the fact that you, because perhaps you're non-for-profit, it's the mother of invention, and you have to reach out to the community, and a lot of us are really profiting from that. Thank you.
If you don't mind, let me sort of change that into a question. On just the subject of accessibility, one of the other things happening in New York, especially the commercial theater, is they're now charging so-called premium prices for Broadway shows. So if you want to sit in a good seat at a Broadway show, you're going to have to pay $250. In some plays, they've begun to charge a surcharge of $18 for a seat on the aisle. Is this something that If you have to raise more and more money for nonprofit institutions, any of you would ever consider doing?
No.
No. No.
But we might charge them for an extra luggage. Right.
Question, ma'am.
Yes, I wanted to ask in terms of your marketing, because there is such a an impact with the computer world and the internet world. Is there any sort of thought about how to promote this to bring younger people in?
Yes, of course, we're constantly looking for new ways to bring in audiences. I believe that, in fact, technology is our friend, not our enemy. Because by using marketing techniques through the internet, you actually awaken people to the possibility of having the experience live in the theatre. And there is no experience to match live theatre. And we, for instance, recently did Midsummer Night's Dream here. We played to nearly 73,000 people. We didn't ask for their birth certificates on the way in or the way out, but I do know, anecdotally, that we played to an enormous number of young people. They came in groups, and they came singly, and they came on date nights.
Date night at Taming with a Shrew, Barbara? That goes over.
I was just thinking, if none of that works, you just have to sleep around.
Sleep around night at the resident theaters across America.
I'm going to regret that I said that.
That's a marketing technique I don't think we had thought of.
I think something that is happening, I've noticed here at the Guthrie, is a way to get younger people to come to the theater, is to make the theater not a place where you go only at 7:30 to see the play, but a place where you come and you hang out and you meet your friends and you have a drink and you go to this beautiful balcony and you look over this beautiful river, and maybe you see a play that night, maybe you don't, but you come to the theater.
I was thinking, if I lived in Minneapolis, I would be here all the time, just hanging out.
Bravo, bravo.
Well, it is a public building. It's open from 8:30 at night until 12 at night, 12 in the morning. I mean, it's about sharing the facility and the art with the people of our region. That's what it's about. And I've long been a great believer that we earn the title of being elitist if we only allow our people into our theatre in order to sort of worship at the temple of art. If you don't actually say, and this is one of the great things about Barbara's Theatre also on Navy Pier, I mean, you go among the hurdy-gurdies and the people getting candy floss and all that stuff, and suddenly you're into Shakespeare. And I think that juxtaposition would have pleased Willie no end.
I do too.
Good evening, I'm Carol Wiederhorn. About 30 years ago, the late August Wilson found a home, a supportive home here in the Twin Cities, and a theater that was willing to take risks with a new and, I think, a completely unknown playwright. I'm concerned, as a 21st century playgoer and subsequent generations, how can current theaters encourage and foster new unknown talent?
This is a singular challenge of the American theater. We must do this if we are to be vital. It is absolutely critical. I think every theater has its own answer to that. You know, we have a program threshold. We have a director of new play development. We've got 12 to 15 projects in development at any given moment. And we are committed to produce new work, not just to workshop or commission it, but to produce it, because I'm married to a playwright. I know what it means, the difference between a reading and a production.
That's the way to get your play produced.
That's right, it works. You gotta do what you gotta do.
We only have time for one more question. Sir?
My name is David Horn. I just finished my first year of University of Minnesota Duluth BFA acting course. With the coming economic struggle, what would you say to kids in like high school who are thinking, man, I love theater, I want to act, I want to do something in it, but it's probably not going to get me a job for 20 years. Like, what would you say to those kids?
I think if you want to go to Wall Street right now, you're not going to get a job in 20 years either. So in some ways, if the economic situation really tanks, you're free up to be any kind of thing you want to be in life. Martha, you want to take that question?
No, yeah, I mean, if you want to be an actor, you have to go be an actor. And there's no better time. How old did you say you are?
19.
perfect, okay? I mean,
Just, you don't have dependents, you don't have responsibility.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's no small matter. I mean, I always say to the young folks who are at our theater right now, do not try to design your life, because I can guarantee you that it's not going to manifest as you're dreaming it is, and with all your 10-year plans and so forth. Do what you love, be around people you love and respect, and go at it with all of your heart. And then if it changes, then it'll change. But don't worry about the economic times. Are you kidding me?
A final thought on that question, Barbara?
Just follow your passion. We all have to follow our passions, right? You have to want to get up in the morning. You have to love what you do. So do it.
And on that inspirational note, I want to thank Barbara Gaines from the Chicago Shakespeare Theater,